10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, I am Amanda with DevExpress and welcome to our final live stream of the year. I am here with our Director of Client Services, Areg. Hey Areg, how are you
Hi, I am
doing?
so pumped up. I think this is going to be the strongest stream of the year. That's my feeling.
The strongest and the last.
We have a captive audience. So I think let's just head right into kind of what
Right,
to
yeah, tell us
expect.
what are you showing us a fix for last week or where are we going?
Yeah, this is actually going to be revisiting last week's topic. So we talked about the report designer in Visual Studio Code. So just to reprise kind of where we were heading into things from. So basically, the point is that if you wanted to author a report in the past, uh, you basically had to actually use the full-blown Visual Studio. So that's mostly okay with our customers, but the problem is that if you're looking to do cross-platform development, you don't really have Visual Studio as an option. So what we really got started with here was if you search the extensions marketplace in Visual Studio Code, we now have an extension called the VS Code Report Designer. So it's not at all tied to Visual Studio anymore, which is great news. That is, if you were not doing report designing in Visual Studio, what you were doing is you were getting a view like this one down here inside of a browser window, and it's kind of not, the browser is a second class citizen when it comes to having the ability to right click on anything that you care about, go into code behind and make changes. So it's not really an ideal environment if you're a developer and you're used to the full-blown Visual Studio experience. And the extension is described in some detail here. I wanted to mention that one thing that has changed between the previous broadcast and this one is that we've actually released the bits for 23.2. So the marketing hasn't been updated yet on our website. It's probably going to be updated today or tomorrow. But actually, you do, if you go to your download manager page on our website, you'll find a new 23.2 installer. And that also kind of means
Oh.
that there's no real reason I should be using the old version of this extension. So let me go to my extension settings, and it looks like I am on 23.2.3 because it's no longer a beta, it's stable. So the way I know that is that this dot three at the very end means that this is actually a matching version to kind of what I see in my download manager because I can also, so I can actually see here the, if I get a little bit closer, there we go, 23.2.3. And let's kind of compare that with the download manager. So if I go into my download manager and kind of be forewarned, it's kind of like my messy room. So there's a lot of line
Oh
items here just
no.
because I've experimented adding so many different license tiers. But what matters is this universal, which hasn't expired yet. And if you see the latest thing that's available, it's no longer in red because it's not an EAP anymore. It's 23.2.3, released on the 13th of December. So silently, we kind of surreptitiously made that happen yesterday. But you should see the bits now. So you can actually get started with 23.2.3 right now. And I should also mention that if you're a DevExtreme user, you'll see a slight difference as well. So if I go down to my many, many, many license types here and I
Wow.
look for something DevExtreme that's not expired. So DevExtreme, yeah, there we go. Looks like this is probably not going to expire. If I go down here, you'll notice there's a slight difference here in that I have this now, I have this option to copy a license key, and that's something that's changed with 23.2 to 3. If you're kind of shrugging and not really understanding what's going on, don't worry. We kind of sent an email blast to those that are affected by this, but the only thing you have to know is that there is a config library now that you're going to be passing in this string into at runtime. And
Okay.
there's no network calls being made to our servers. Nothing has changed in kind of the architecture or what's going on. It's just a small little thing, just to note if you're moving to 23.2.
Dev
So if
Extreme.
you're Yeah, for DevExtreme, yes. So that does not apply to the web people using ASP.NET or either web forms or MVC or Blazor. It doesn't affect them because we actually we took pains already to apply the license key on your behalf if you install our product, so you don't have to worry about that. But for DevExtreme, since it's basically you pull stuff from the npm packages and you configure them however you'd like, you do have to actually manually pass in a license key, and you get it from the download manager. And if you don't do that, the end of the world situation in that case is that if you go into your browser tools, what you'll see that's different from everyone else is you'll get a little message here that's going to also tell you that, hey, you're using a trial edition DevExpress library. So you may not even notice it, but I just wanted to point this out because that's a little bit of a difference. And we're going to go over it a million times, I'm sure. I just wanted to kind of hit on a really um, big difference. So it may be unexpected, but I don't think it's going to really change anyone's life after you account for it for the very first time. Anyway, so I
Oh,
wanted to dig into was actually running this report designer in VS Code. And like I said, we're on 23.2 now. And so if I go to, run my commands in Visual Studio, I have a few different options. I have to, at whatever point you actually install the extension for the report design, you have to actually start the designer because there's a back end process that gets run. I've already done it in this project, I believe, and I did it last time as well, but so I don't think I need to do this at all, but I'm hitting start designer because you do need to do that. And In your case, I think if you don't have a file that's a reporting config JSON file, it's going to be created for you. And by default, the only entry should be this JSON connection string. So the only thing I did last time was I added this thing, a Northwind connection string, and giving it the name that our reports from our demos were expecting. And the reasons that I actually went ahead and I took our demos in Windows and I copied them over to this Mac machine. As you can tell, I'm on a Mac. So I'm on VS Code and I don't have Visual Studio as an option. I have to actually use VS Code to use the report designer. So the report that we were having problems with last time was this invoice report. So if I click here, and since the report designer has already been running, I get this. And the specific error we were getting last time is when we're clicking on preview, we were getting a scary message that the connection string isn't like quite right. So this was that long
oh yeah.
message, that long problem. So turns out that actually I thought it was related to not having the right database. I thought that we needed to add another database. And so what I did is that if I go to Azure Data Studio, I made a few changes here. And this database, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm running against, it's not Postgres. I'm actually running in a Docker container. I mentioned this last time. It's Azure SQL Edge. And the reason I'm doing that is because I am on an M1 Mac, and so I need to do that
Hmm.
because I can't, I haven't really actually tried using the ARM processor version of Windows. I don't have high hopes for it, so I'm just trying to run natively on my Mac. I guess the other option, if you don't mind, you could connect to the cloud. But for development testing environments, I don't like connecting to a network location if I can avoid it. So that's why I'm kind of I have a Docker container already set up, and things are already, firing on all cylinders. The only thing that I did here that's a little bit different is I also added a volume for storage so that it's a persistent Docker container so that any changes I make, any databases I add, are not deleted every time I restart the Docker container. But that's not a
I,
big deal. Uh, I've already gone ahead and added a bunch of databases. I only needed one, Northwind, but I was trying to troubleshoot this problem, and I thought that the data we were looking for in this demo was from AdventureWorks. I'm not really familiar with AdventureWorks, but I thought it was from there. Actually, it turns out that the particular uh, demo data is based on a view. I think it's called order details extended, something like that. So it was, yeah, order details extended was the name of the view in the case that it was looking for. And I found that out because I actually looked at the plain text version of this of this repx file. So a repx file basically is a glorified XML file. Spoiler. That's kind of how I kind of pieced together what was going on. So in just like a regular text editor, if I were to open this, so if I go here into, I think it was called DX Blazor reporting for, so I have to actually navigate to the right place, but DX Blazor reporting or reports for, and if I were to go into this particular report layout, it's called the invoice report, and brace yourselves, it's ugly, I know, but it's just a long it's a long, big XML file.
Mm.
And if I were to go and look at, let's say, order details, I could find all the the data-bound objects that have mention of order details and find them. So this is the same visual version of what we were looking at in the VS Code report designer here, but I'm just looking at it in text form, and I kind of pieced together what was going on. Long story short, I needed those views on my database. And the other thing is that actually in our database or in our demos, we had taken a different approach. We had actually, because we package our demos onto client machines, we don't necessarily know what's going to be there, if there's going to be a Microsoft SQL Server instance or not. The way we've been packaging our demos for a few years now is that a lot of our data is actually SQLite 3 based data, which means it uses a single file. So it's a .db file. So what I did is I already went to the trouble of also not just copying the repx layout file, but also copying this nwin.db file, which is a SQLite 3 database. And so now we gotta basically point this to the right sort of database. So firstly, I'm gonna kind of comment out this connection string. And by the way, if you're going to be making changes to connection strings and we're talking about this report designer, you do need to close this tab so that, well, you need to close the tab at some point to reload it. So just be aware that I'm going to be closing this tab later and opening it again. So it rereads this connection string file. So I'm going to basically have this be kind of the backup or the old connection string. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm also going to go ahead and comment this out. I believe I can just go ahead and, since it's just plain old JSON, and I'm going to point this and give it the right name. So let's give it a name that doesn't have back at the end. I want to point it to this thing in my data folder, the northwind.db. And so this kind of brings the question up of how does my connection string look like? Because I'm always struggling, just like everyone else, to find the connection string syntax. And so I found it here. So a handy topic, by the way. I always Google it a million times, but uh, if I always Google the XPO providers that we have for database types to just find out what do I have to provide. So basically, if you already are at it, or XPO supported databases. So basically, XPO is our data access layer. It's mostly an optional system that you don't have to use if you're using our other UI libraries. So you might be using Entity Framework at this point as your ORM. You could keep doing that if you are. But for connecting to a raw database connection, you need some choice of data access libraries. And so we had to roll our own because we wanted to have all that in-house and have the access to those data access libraries ourselves. We didn't want to
Right.
depend on a third party. So Entity Framework is great, and you could keep using it, and there's no real issue with using it and our controls, but we did need, for our own peace of mind, our own data access libraries, and that's what XPO is. So SQLite is one of the providers that are provided here, and we describe all the bits and pieces you'll need if you're going to individually be using SQLite. This NuGet package is basically something you'd install if you didn't install the meta package that includes the SQLite functionality, but I think all that stuff is already included and baked into our reporting package. So if you're curious about how that all works and on NuGet, if I go and search for packages, if I go to reports, so reports, and it's going to be the not a platform specific type of reporting, but I think it might even be called reporting because if I do that, yeah. So reporting, let's go a little bit further. Yeah, this one obviously I visited it recently, but DevExpress reporting core. So this is basically independent of whatever platform I'm using, and basically I'm adding this package. And this meta package does include access to things like the data meta package as well, and that I think includes all of the data access libraries. So I think you'll get access to things like our SQLite provider if you have this. So we do already have all this. I just wanted to explain kind of the process by which it's being included. So let's head back into what we were dealing with here with the format that our connection string needs to be written in. So I believe we are going to be using SQLite. So we're going to do something like this. So we're not going to be using the connection I painstakingly built up already to SQL Azure Edge because that's not really the database we're using. We're using this Northwind database that's this DB file here. So again, SQLite, and we're going to get a different type of error now when I say this because obviously my data source is not file name. So let's start with this. I like stepping into a new error at a time so that we can kind of figure out what's not being satisfied at this time. So let me go ahead and remind you what the old error looked like. So it's this
Let's
fails
not.
to connect to the database. That's what it was saying. Uh, well, actually, this is the new error. It says unable to open database file. So it's unable to open this file, and that's because I just called it file name. And I'm going to go ahead and just double check that by opening the same report designer again and having it tell me again what this is just to reread the configuration. And it said, yeah, again, failed to connect to the database, which is what I was expecting because our data source is not actually file name, it's actually northwind.db. So I had to give it northwind.db. But beyond that, obviously, it also lives in a folder called data. But I can't just give it a relative path name. I've got to give it a full path name. And if you're on Windows, let me maybe zoom in a bit. If you're on Windows, the way the command looks like, so I want to actually go and get the current path and put it in my clipboard. I've already done it once before, that's why it's in the history, but let's assume that I don't have that. If I were to, get the file path in a Unix type environment, you type in pwd, you get the current working directory. And you would want to pass that into however you copy on your system. So on a Linux system, it would be something like xclip, cellclip, this long complicated thing I use a lot in Linux environments. In Windows environments, it looks something like this, clip.exe. You have that both in PowerShell and in WSL in Windows. And in Mac, it looks a little bit different, pb copy. Yeah, unfortunately, I have to keep all three of these in my head because I switch between machines all the time. But once I go ahead and do that, I could actually copy paste in the current path, which is basically just about where the Northwind database lives. The only difference is I also have to account for the fact that it's in a folder called data. Let's go ahead and save that. So this looks correct, and let's see if I can go ahead and reopen my report. So this is my invoice report, and let me kind of get rid of the terminal. Let me get rid of the sidebar, and let me maybe even go ahead and make this not gigantic. So let's take care of that as well while we're at it. So I believe it's zoom settings. So zoom, let's reset the zoom. Yeah, even better. Okay, so this looks kind of reasonable. So now if we go ahead and preview, it's going to be reading the connection string again from this location. This is the name of the file. I have the full name of the file. The provider is our provider for SQLite. I think this is the right provider. And it's a SQLite 3 database. I believe that's how we wrote the database. And by the way, since we're at it, I mean, I guess I can also prove that we actually do have the data. So let me, while we're at it, go ahead and let me close the current database I'm in. Why not? And I have a database browser that's kind of like the equivalent of Microsoft SQL uh, SSRS, but not SSRS. It's the equivalent of the client you use in Windows. SQL Server Management Studio is what's called in Windows. So this is the equivalent. In Mac, it's called Azure Data Studio, and Azure Data Studio is the new latest and greatest. But this is just an open source kind of reader of SQLite files, and I think it's written with like GTK or something. So you could install this program in Linux if you'd like, but let's actually check that I can like read the data from this nwin.db file. So let's go ahead and point this to uh, the location that I expect my files to live at. Uh, and the location is gonna be DX Blazor reports 4. And I believe that it was called data, and this should load up the right folder, and this nwin.db file is where I think data does exist, and lo and behold, this is what all the data looks like. If you have seen Northwind, you've seen this a million times. So I can even look at the database structure, and I have all of the views, including this thing that killed me last time, which was ordered tails extended. This is the specific way it's named in SQLite, I guess, and we're using the SQLite database. So anyway, so my point is that I did verify that northwind.db is actually the right database with the right data. The connection string looks right. And now if I go ahead and try to build this report, I think that it should work. And it does. So
Oh,
we have basically this whole thing rendered outside of Windows. So again, it's using, and I'm gonna again go ahead and maybe I should even do this inside of my other console. So if I were to kind of look at who's doing the heavy lifting in terms of rendering, if I go to .NET list package here, you'll kind of see that I'm using one of our drawing libraries to do it here. So it's if you're curious, it's this up here, up top, DevExpress drawing Skia. So that is basically handling cross-platform drawing. So I'm not doing the drawing at all in system drawing because as of .NET 6, Microsoft said you're not supposed to be using system drawing for, cross-platform drawing. You need to use our Skia support for it. And DevExpress implemented Skia support in this particular package, and it's optional, but it's required if you're not on Windows. So be just clear on this that if you're going to be rendering stuff outside of Windows, you need to use our Skia drawing engine, and that's why I have it here. And that's actually what's doing, the report generation here in our case. So this is a beautiful report. And let me go ahead and reset the zoom. I think that it kind of got freaked out. Okay. And I'll go ahead and even, export this to a PDF just to verify that, not only can I preview it, and I get like all this nice stuff, and this binding works correctly, and I'm not even sure. Oh yeah, I even get filtering, so it's a parameterized report as well, by the way, which is, I believe, actually
nice.
another point. So I can like get another result set, and this is actually communicating with the northwind.db file, and it got me 58 pages of results, and I can get a PDF out of it as well. So let's go ahead and look at that PDF. I think that it's probably already in preview in my case. I believe, let's take a look. Where did it download to? Let's take a look. Oh, it's my download folder. So let me go ahead and check my download folder. So uh, download, the downloads. Okay. And there we go. This is the PDF. So it's all 58 pages in all its glory, and it's rendered properly and all that stuff. I wanted to touch on one thing because I just remember this as soon as I started looking and playing with the parameters here. But there was one other point we ran into last time, and it's that I had an issue with filtering on the categories for Northwind last time. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason is that it's kind of like a long, worn out story where we kind of, I think, changed filter string and its behavior many times over the years. And so I kind of was frazzled and was not really expecting to find it on the report itself. But actually, the report has a property called filter string. And it's kind of like the old location and also the new location. There was an intermediate set of years where I don't think this was available from the web end user designer and also from this designer. But now it is, and this is where you would actually handle filtering on this property on Extra Report. So if I were to go ahead and, add a data source to this, because I don't think this report is anything other than a blank report. So yeah, I have nothing, no data source or anything. Let's just go ahead and just bind directly to this data source, which is, the thing that works, this Northwind connection string. And maybe just for argument's sake, I'll, again, go ahead and build a new query and run the query builder to do it. And I want categories and maybe products. And it's going to notice kind of that this category ID here, I could just connect it here as like this is the foreign key, this is the primary, and I'm going to go ahead and get category names, descriptions. Why not also get the product name and maybe units in stock, something like that. And let's preview the results. And I get basically this data. I'm going to add this to the report. So let's go and let's, I'm not going to parameterize the query itself because there's no real need to do that on the query level. I did that last time and it's not really going to help or hurt us, but it just, I think, extra complexity that maybe you don't necessarily need to care about because it's not really our task at this point. But if I were to, for example, show you all the category names and the product names, uh, just to verify that we're actually getting the data. So category names and product names in my case, and maybe go ahead and let's click both these objects and resize both of them. And maybe from here, go ahead and I don't want to spend too much time styling this, but let's just look at the data we have just to make sure that we have data. So we get a bunch of data, but it's not really greatly organized. What I probably want to go ahead and do is I want to add some idea of a new header, a group header. So what I would want to do in that case is I would want to actually add a group header above this detail. So by the way, this is kind of handled for you if you, and let me close that sidebar. This is all kind of handled for you if you design it in this report wizard. The design report wizard option, and if you click table report, actually does step you through kind of all these things and does these steps automatically. You don't have to worry about it, but if you're ever editing a report manually, you kind of like have a question of how do I do this by hand? The answer is what you're looking at. So if I go and I edit the report, I can actually edit its spans because get rid of that parameter or that filter on my properties list. But again, if I go back to the report explorer and I go to the report and let's go here to the report, load the report. I have the option of looking at the different the structure here of my report. So if I were to, for example, reorganize some of these properties by order and take a look at them, I believe that I can go into my bands collection directly, maybe called band, but let's go ahead and one more time get the designer to give us a hint as to how to add and remove bands. So let's go down here and go to our expressions and one more time go to Report Explorer And I believe I can go to my report and go back into my bands from here. Okay, so I'm in the particular band I was talking about, and what I want to go ahead and do is I want to have some idea of filtering. So the specific thing I want to um, show is the different distinct categories we have. So let's go ahead and let's maybe add a sort on this detail. So let's go ahead and look at the properties we have, and I'll pick a sort field for my sort on this detail. So let's maybe sort by, let's say, category name. That's kind of like an obvious thing. And my goal is I want to just show how kind of we can apply a particular filter so we get only, and let's make this a little bit more compact, how we can only show a particular um, category one at a time. So the idea is that I have to go back into my data. I'm going to be adding a parameter. I'm going to go to my parameters collection list, and I'm going to edit. I'm going to add a parameter that's going to um, allow me to select, let's say, multiple categories, and I'm going to actually be pointing it at my list of. It's a dynamic list, and it's from basically this this set of categories. So I'm going to basically providing category names. Um, this would basically work if you're kind of looking to do this quick and dirty. It is something though that I don't recommend doing in this particular way, and the reason is that if we filter, our parameter is going to behave a little weirdly. In that, if we pick a category, uh, as soon as we pick that category thing, we're not going to see other categories in our drop-down list, and I'll explain kind of by showing what the problem is. But let's also apply the filter string on the report level. So again, if I go back into the properties editor, and this is the detail, but there is also a report object that I want to access its properties. And let's go ahead and point at its filter string. So filter string, I'm going to give it a filter expression. And if you have the plus, you can add conditions. Category name equals, I think it should be, since this is going to be a list of different values you're going to select from, I think it should be is any of. I think that's the right operator to use. And I could enter a static value here. So uh, like I could type in green as a static value if I wanted to. Actually, this is not quite right because the syntax isn't right. And also, I don't want static values. If you click here on this down arrow, you have the option to switch between different types of values. So you could either set like a property expression. So you could do this tautology of, category name equals category name, which is obviously true. Or what you can do is you can set the properties that are, defined in the report. I only have one property. I think it's called, sorry, one parameter. And that parameter is called parameter one, I believe. So it's going to pick that up. And just to reiterate kind of what parameter one is. Parameter one down here was this thing that's a list of different category names. And I said there's going to be a problem with it. The problem is that if you select a category, it's going to work the first time, but then the second time, the list is going to be filtered for you. So I have to give a parameter. So the parameter, let's say, is select all. So let's display everything. So we get all the beverages, and then we get everything else. So we get beverages here on page 1, condiments on page 2, dairy products, and etc. We get all the categories. But the problem is that maybe if I go ahead and pick like grains and cereals and meat and poultry, and I submit, I should see that actually this did not happen in my case, but usually the worry or the concern is that when you're actively using something in a drop-down list, uh, you can't, and my apologies, our building is having a minor announcement. I don't think I'm in any danger, but
Is it a fire alarm? What's happening?
That's a great question. We like doing things live. I assure you folks, this is live. But my point was that if I actually pick one of these items, generally speaking, if this was a dashboard or a report, we think that, or we rightfully believe that using the same data source that you're actually buying the data and this dropdown is generally not a good idea. And so if I were to pick meat and poultry, there's a small chance that, this drop down would be broken and it would only show me meat and poultry. In my case, it's actually I lucked out, and basically the way that the master filter mode works in reporting is not quite how it works in dashboard. In dashboard, it would bite you. So in that case, what you need to do is add a different data source, which is just the drop down list data source. So that's just the categories table basically, and you don't need every item in the categories table. You just need the names anyway. So the category names, and basically that's what we call SQL data source 2. And let's also update the binding so that it's pointed to SQL data source 2, and the structure of it is exactly the same. Um, and I think that with that, it should already be live, and the dropdown should work just the same, and it does, I believe. So I could pick just confections, uh, and I get only confections, and I still have other things in my dropdown in this particular case. The other thing is, let's go ahead and these are page break setting. I want to also make it a little bit clearer that uh, these are category names. So let's maybe go ahead and change the align settings, or let's change some other properties on this XR label. So let me go ahead and see what object this is. This is a label, and the label should have things like alignment. So alignment, text alignment, I want to maybe set it centered. And maybe I want to go ahead and, if I'm allowed to, I want to, you know, take a look at this and make some changes as well. So I'm going to run the query builder on this query and see what options I have, some query properties. We have some pretty advanced query properties, even though I'm not even editing the query by hand. So these are the results I get. The problem is that it's not super cool that I have all this product data because I'm kind of repeating many entries in the same category. I kind of want to display one category at a time. So what I could do is I could go ahead and not show products, but beyond that, I could even go and make some changes, some advanced SQL changes in this query builder. I could select distinct and enable that, and then I should just get basically like the 8 categories. So 8 category names, 8 category descriptions, I believe, something like that. So now that's correct. Now that looks much nicer in my opinion, because that's really all I wanted to show with this report. And the SQL gets updated. There's also an option that you can edit raw SQL if you'd like from the query builder. It's by default disabled because obviously that's a big security problem, because that's like a, it's like please SQL injection. That's the problem there. And this product names field is not gonna bind to anything, I believe. So I might as well just remove it. But let's see what it binds to in this case. So I only care about categories. So I want beverages and seafood maybe.
Ugh.
And I don't know what this, yeah, that's what I will get. And like I said, that second label, not really useful for anything. So I could just get rid of it right now. And so I want to showcase kind of like how filter string works, how parameters work, and all that. And I have to provide a parameter, so confections and maybe one other thing. So let's say produce and meat, poultry. So
What
it'll be
is a
3 items.
confection, Areg?
So yeah, so that was just to explain some of the mechanics. And the other thing I want to get to is, let's say we have this report definition, this regex file. Typically speaking, you're not going to ever be running it like this in this way in the report designer. The process you're going to be taking is a little bit different. So let's go ahead and create a new project where we're going to take that over from scratch. So .NET new console, and I'm going to go to my terminal so it's a little bit bigger. So let's go back down here. Let's clear the window, and let me go ahead and .NET new console application, and let's call it like console reporting. Creatively enough, console reporting, and if this all succeeds, I want to go into the directory. So console reporting is what we're talking about, because what was .NET? Oh, sorry. You have to provide commands to .NET. I always forget to do that. I'm newing a console application, and you'll see what you have access to for templates if you do .NET new list. And so now I'm in that folder. So this is the stuff in the folder, um, pretty bare. But we're going to go into Visual Studio Code and go into this project. And I believe VS Code opened this little window here, but didn't focus it. And what I want to go and do is I definitely don't want to just run Hello World a bunch of times. Obviously, this is going to run correctly, but what I do want is I want to create a report. So I know that I need an extra report, and I'm going to be getting something from, a regex file. So let's get the files we need. So we need the layout file first. So that layout file, let's copy it from the other project, and I know where the other project is. It's called DXBlaze reports or reporting, and it's in this folder. And this invoice report is what I got from our demos. I'm going to just make it available to me in the project, and now we have this invoice report.regex, and I don't need to futz around with the design of it. The layout is already right, and we'll kind of try running that. So you also notice the red squigglies. The red squigglies are because I don't have a using for the extra report type. So if you were dealing with this live, you would go and you would search in docs. So basically, I would go to start with docs. I would go here to our reporting products, and I would look for extra report members. So if it chooses to load my Wi-Fi, I would go to extra report members to get the class page. Let's just call it extra report because it's hitting too many options. And if I need to do the search, I will do the search. It looks like it's not really complying with me because it's a very common name used in different namespaces. So extra report members, and let's do a full text search. So this is the process I use when I'm kind of trying to figure out what dependencies I need to meet. If you're using Visual Studio proper, IntelliSense already does all this stuff for you. But this is the namespace I need. And I'm not going to type it by hand because I'm really bad at like avoiding typos. So let's do a using and include this particular entity, and it's still not satisfied. The reason is that we have to actually add the .NET package for reporting. And so if you're curious again about how to find the name of that .NET package, the NuGet package that is, if you go to NuGet and you search for, I believe it's called Reporting Core with DevExpress at the front. So DevExpress Reporting Core. So I believe it's on the second page of results. And yeah, this one, DevExpress Reporting Core. So I need to actually add this. And if you don't know the command syntax, this is the Visual Studio command syntax, and these are the other two options. I'm using the third option. And I'm going to go to my terminal, and I'm going to do a .NET. Well, let's list the packages first just to show you I don't have anything in this project right now. So this is basically a .NET 8 project with nothing. And by the way, I should also mention, I know we're going a million miles a minute, but we have .NET 8 support. And the reason that we have it now is that we've actually had .NET 8 preview support for a very, very long time. For all the preview editions, I think, of .NET 8. .NET 8 was obviously made generally available during .NET Conf. And after that point, it became an option for us to make it available with the stable full release. And that's why this, by default, is .NET 8. But anyway, I don't have any packages installed, so let's go ahead and let's, at the top of the screen, let's do a .NET add package and the package name, and add reporting core. And let's clear up so I can kind of show at the top of the screen, .NET list my packages I have now. And let's see what packages are installed. So the reporting core is installed. Like I said, this isn't all we need, but this is a good start. And the red squigglies have already gone ahead and disappeared. And there is a static member. So usually when you're kind of building an extra report instance, you would expect that we just kind of knew the default constructor. And you could kind of get started with that if your extra report already descends from if your extra report class descends from our base one. But that's not really how we handle regex files. So from regex files, you kind of have to use a static member called from file, not from stream in my case, but from file. I'm going to give it the name of, or the path. It can be relative path in my case, but invoice report.regex is kind of where this report exists. And then I want to go ahead and I believe it's called export to PDF. So export to PDF. And I'm going to call it like out.pdf. So I'm going to actually do what we just did visually, but do it from here, from the command line, so you don't have to ever visually even look at the layout. So this is mostly on the right track. It's not going to work as is because we don't yet have any way to draw. We just have basically the core reporting libraries, which I think is all you need on Windows, but it's not all you need here. So specifically what I need, I'm going to see if I have drawing included as a meta package. I'm curious if it is. So yeah, drawing is already included, but what I need is one step beyond drawing. So drawing means that this is going to be able to be drawn in Windows and rendered in Windows as a PDF. In non-Windows environments, so basically Linux and Mac, like I'm on, I also need the other new drawing engine, which is Drawing Skia. So it's this thing here. So DevExpress Drawing Skia. And again, I'm going to copy it because I don't trust my fingers not to typo. And let's add that package as well. So .NET add package. Now when I list the packages, I should have these two packages here available to me. Now it should actually draw with one exception, which is that this is a data bound regex file. So it should kind of like explode at us and say that, hey, there's a problem with doing this because I can't find the connection string. I can't make out where I don't know where Northwind is. What are you talking about, Northwind? So if I do that, let's see what sort of error we get. .NET run. And so let me scroll up. The top of my error list. So .NET add packages run, and then writing, and it said stuff with the certificates and unhandled exception down here. Right after I said hello world, there's an unhandled exception. Error when trying to populate the data source. The following exception was thrown, could not find the following connection in the config file. And that's because I don't have a config file. I don't have any idea of configuration. And I'm not going to be using a config file because it doesn't really necessarily make sense to use one. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be setting a data source, which is something you're probably very familiar with if you've used our reporting libraries. And I need to actually pass in some sort of connection parameters. And since it's SQLite, the connection parameters are, I believe, the SQLite connection parameters. I've already gone ahead and found out that's what's called. So SQLite connection parameters, and these two strings, the first one's the file name, the second one's the password. And since, well, the file name is going to be what you expect, and the password is going to be nothing. So I need the file, the Northwind DB file. So let's go ahead and copy that as well, just like we copied the regex layout. So DX Blazor reports for, I believe that's where it lived. Let's go ahead and get one of the DB files. So let's go here and point to the DB, and let's put the DB file here in my console reporting directory. And I believe that why not also go ahead and get the I don't know if I need a relative path or not, actually. I'm not sure. Let's try to use a relative path and see if we can get away with it. I'm curious if it will work. So, and I also need a using for this. That's why I have a red squiggly. So let's add that using while we're at it. So this is the correct namespace is type lives in. So I wanted to kind of make sure that I was doing this live and without any helpers so that you can kind of see what the workflow actually looks like. So this is actually like, correct me if I'm wrong, only 3 lines if you were fully qualifying the name. So it's really easy to do this. And now, if I go ahead and done it run, I don't think we're gonna have any problems if it's okay with me using relative paths for the connection. So hello world and no other errors. And I could open the Finder so I could actually look at the files. And Finder is here. Console reporting is what it opened up, and I have all the files, and I have something new called out.pdf. Let's see what out.pdf looks like now. Out.pdf looks, well, it's not bound correctly because actually I needed, like I suspected, I needed the full path name, not the relative path. So let's fix that last problem. So I need to copy the result of this pwd command, and like I said, on macOS, I pass it into something called pbcopy, which is pasteboard copy. Everything in Mac has to be done slightly in a weird way. So we read standard input for getting the path, uh, and and let's go ahead and try running with this updated set of parameters. I think this should actually point to the data. Okay, it's running fine. And let me go ahead and let me make sure that I'm actually outputting it. And uh, let's see where my console is. New SQLite connection parameters, invoice report, export to PDF. Uh, let's see that this is what I'm expecting. I believe that I think there's a small little problem here with the full path because there's a symbolic link in the middle. So let me go ahead and correct for that as well. So this symbolic link CAR is basically my shorthand for this little place that I created. It's a workspace for these projects. So let's do a .NET Run now. And I think that's where the database actually does live, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, and let's verify PWD console reporting. Okay, so I think at this point I can open this output and let's take a look at what my result is. Uh, One second, let's pull it up. Uh, do, do, do. It's under, I have a complicated report structure. Let's say console report. Okay. And yeah, it looks like actually I have the data, and it's rendered correctly. Okay, so it looks like actually the SQLite database did not quite like that parameter. I have the rest of the data. So I have the layout functioning correctly. It looks like actually the other parameter, which was the authentication, was not quite what Northwind was expecting. And again, just a reminder of kind of what the other full set of connection strings look like. Uh, just to, again, reiterate that since we're kind of reprising where we were. So if I were to, let's say, go to my downloads and pull up, let's say, this invoice, I believe that's what it was called. This is the result. So sorry to keep you waiting for that, but yeah. So this is the full result bound to data. And like I said, there was a small problem with the connection parameters. So it looks like probably what was happening is that I need to sanitize this address um, into being something that it's expecting. So it looks like there's some sort of problem. Since you're going to be on a web server, likely this forward portion of the path is probably going to be given to you from ASP.NET middleware, so you don't have to really worry about it. In my case, it's a little bit funky, so bear with me. But my point is that these three lines are the three steps you would be taking to actually generate a data representation. So actually, that should. Oh, I believe there's one other possibility here, which is I might be able to set a data member. I won't do that today, but if you wanted to, you could go ahead and if you had multiple tables in your database, you could go ahead and set a data member, and you could, point this in a way that would look at, let's say, the orders table or the categories table. Since we're using multiple tables, it doesn't really matter in our case, but this is something you would do as a quick fix if you had a problem like this. But in any case, I wanted to kind of touch back onto the original project, which was this one, and really, I guess, tie things in a bow and mention that, the report designer is out there. You can certainly make use of it today in Visual Studio Code. And again, this is in 23.2, and I wanted to just in this call or in this session clarify that filter strings are something that's on the report. They're not somewhere else, and we've over the years moved them around, but it's a property on Extra Report again, and nothing really should be all too surprising. So basically, the place that this report designer reads things from is this JSON file, but typically speaking, you're going to be reading from a data source property. So with that, Amanda, I think I'm totally
Are,
like
are you
completely done with this topic. There's
are
no
you
more
sure?
really that can be wrung out.
You squeeze the last drops
Yeah,
out
go to the last drop. I mean,
at the
I
end of
can't imagine one
2023.
other workflow you could do for reporting. There's just nothing else. Everything else is old under the sun. So, but yeah, certainly if you're running
Mm,
like this on like a cron job or running this like on a weekly basis, like the steps I took in the other project,
hmm
which was back here. These steps are basically the things you're going to be running week in, week out. So, but I guess what's new is that you now have the access to see the latest and greatest live and make changes with your own two hands.
Love it.
But yeah,
Thank you. Thanks for wrapping that up with a bow. Loving the holiday reference in there.
yeah, of course.
Just like a nice little present.
And we have a stocking stuffer for our customers. So if you go to your download manager, actually you will find the latest installer. So
23.2.
yeah, 23.2. So just go to devexpress.com, download manager. And if you are not using a download manager, if you go to mpmjs.com and you go to our DevExtreme pages, those should also be updated by now. So if I go to DevExtreme, it should be on 23.2.3 as well. So yeah, this was last published 6 hours ago. This is the latest and greatest, folks. So
Wow. All right. Nice little stocking stuffer. All
yeah,
right. Thank you, Areg.
sure.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this Twitch journey in 2023. We will see you in the new year. I did post an email. It is stream@devexpress.com. If you want to send us suggestions or things you want to hear about or see
Or
us
fan
do
mail.
live
Fan mail.
or fan mail.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, we'll take that fan art, would be fun. You can send it there. But with
Yes.
that, thank you very much. Thank you, Areg. Thank you all for being here. Have a happy holiday season, and we'll see you in the new year. Bye bye.
Bye.